Community Life Public Safety Committee meeting to order. If I could have everyone rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everyone give me the word. Good stuff. Okay, roll call, please.
Pinsnalt.
Present.
Ermeling. Here. Alsted is excused. Sarwanka.
Present.
Voss. Present. Lopez Serrero.
Here.
And Olson.
Okay. All members are present and or accounted for. Would anyone like to read the mission statement? Thank you, Barb.
The Community Life and Public Safety Committee involved and makes recommendations to the village board on matters related to safety, welfare, and livability within the village and their impact upon the village of Weston residents.
Okay, public comments. I see no one in the audience. Public comments. Is there anyone on Zoom or on cell phone?
You just want to make an announcement though about committee member Alsted.
Sure. Would that be under written communications?
You could do that under written communications too.
Let's do that,
Okay.
please. No one zooming?
No, just staff.
Okay, and no one calling? Okay. No, you didn't have any little slip deals? No, so no public comments. We'll move on to meeting minutes from previous meetings, minutes from December 2nd, 2024. Motion to approve by Ermeling. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Sarwanka. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Carried. Written communications. We just have one that Andrea Alsted has resigned from the committee. She's no longer able to make the commitment due to some personal reasons. So we thank her for her service and for helping us out here. Really appreciate all the hard work that she has done. We will be posting that vacancy via social media and all the other magic that Jamie has. Any other written communication?
That we've received.
Okay, perfect. Code enforcement updates. So,
It can be, yes, absolutely.
I think you're all we got.
Yep, it looks like it.
Michael chopped liver.
Code enforcement. He's definitely not in meetings for that. So, we do have the detailed list in the agenda, if you want to skip to the, that section of the agenda. I think we have 40 on the list. As far as anything serious is concerned, if you guys have any questions, by all means.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Do all of these cases come in online? Are these all documented online, or are they any cases that the village actually
Some of them are driveways, right?
identifies?
Yeah, so I mean, the process is there's the online submittal button. We do take phone calls as well. Some people email. So all of these cases are what are in the digital system. Okay.
And so, like, what's the process? Like, when does it go to Jeremy's people? At what point does it?
Yeah, so this time of the year, we have a meeting with Mountain Bay Metro once a month. But we do, if we've got cases that we as staff have gone through the process of sending a letter and notifying the individuals of the potential issue. If there's no recourse after the deadline from that, then we'll send them over to Jeremy.
So is that
And
like
it's
a month or 2 months?
It depends on the issue.
How
Yeah,
deep it
there's
is or
different
whatever.
timelines for different issues. If it's if it's a car parked in the right of way and in the way of a snowplow, it's a lot more time sensitive than other items.
And initially, they had some that weren't taken care of, and so there was an initial push on them that was quite a few of them that letters had been sent out, there was non-compliance, and those came over to us right away, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's our list up there on the screen.
And I think you've got some detail on there at the bottom of each 14, where it shows like whether it was a citizen that called or a staff member that saw it driving by, or if it was presented online through the Evolve portal. You can also track some of these. Our side, we can't see it very well from the public or at the committee. If you go to Evolve, and you can click on nuisance search, is that what, or code violation search or something, and you can type in the address, and it'll give you the least amount of information possible.
We're working through adding more details to that outside facing portal for this year. So.
So your New Year's resolution?
Yeah, it's absolutely, it's a department resolution for the 2025, yes.
Excellent. How about the stop work order on, let's go for that one.
On the storage units.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Back in early December, I posted the stop work orders on the project out there. One of the big issues was lack of building lighting. But they had started leasing the units out prior to having any sort of final inspection conducted. I did issue them a electrical permit so that they can actually get the electrical taken care of, which they are working through. WPS contacted me last week, I believe Friday, to make sure it's okay that they put the utilities into the electrical pedestal because of the stop work order postings out there. So I've spent phone calls with the owner, the contractor, and the lender extensively about the project. Prevail Bank is hoping that the owner and the contractor get their stuff straightened out ASAP. So.
is there occupancy on the 2 units that are, let me say that a different way. Because the village of Weston granted occupancy to the 2 buildings that are already occupied.
We have not granted a certificate of occupancy because of the lack of lighting on the buildings.
What would that look?
Well,
Sounds like a public safety.
there's 2 ways to handle it, right? One, we have them vacate every single tenant that's in those buildings. 2 is the stop work order enforcing them to get the project in compliance. And that's why nothing else has progressed towards the east on the other buildings.
I guess I'm more so concerned with asking what the status is from late November, I think it was late November, I thought it was Thanksgiving time, that the stop work was happened. You can verify the date, but in 45 days, has the needle moved? Like, how close are we to having those buildings so that they're safe, so that you looked at them and said, hey, this isn't gonna fall down and smash my camper? Or
From a structural standpoint, the commercial building inspector's been out there. He doesn't have any major concerns with the methods of construction. So from them falling over, the buildings aren't gonna fall over. The issue is individuals that are renting space out there, particularly this time of the year, we don't have extended daylight hours. So the lack of site lighting out there is that, and they don't have adequate fire extinguishers mounted on the buildings. They've got some, but they're inadequate for code spacing. So the biggest concern is the electrical out there from a public safety standpoint.
and the timeline to repair that, or haven't?
They have been pretty silent for the month of December and beginning part of January. So
Like 37 days. What is the next step?
the next step is I issue a repair order And that gives them a 30-day window where they have to do it.
What's the triggering event for that?
I essentially, that's what I was talking with the lender about last week was if we don't have any traction this week with that or progress, then that's the next step.
Okay.
So, but I anticipate by the end of this week, we'll either have some electricity out there on the buildings, or we're gonna have to write the 30-day repair order. And then if that expires, then we have to take more drastic steps of revoking their approvals for the site.
Thank you.
Do they have any hard surface, like up to where the approaches are and stuff, or
Unfortunately, that was another, I mean,
tripping hazards and stuff?
yeah, there's gravel out there in road base. Unfortunately, since they never bothered to ask about any sort of progress in the fall,
Mhm.
they never scheduled any paving.
Yeah, I like the first.
Binder layer out there. Yeah. So, that's on their list for first thing in the spring. It's not like it's large, 3-inch
Mhm.
material that's out there. It's pretty much all road base that's out there. So, most of it is not a tripping hazard. There is some, particularly towards the middle part of the development and towards the east, there are some trenches that have been trenched in from pipe, and that sort of stuff that create some tripping hazards, because when they fill back in on their trenches, they've sunk. So.
So we would need a motion to acknowledge that report.
Real quick, on open case number 1, is that a spelling error? Is that supposed to be, raise or repair?
Yes.
Okay. I was just
Oh,
wondering, kinda
That's a
raise.
rave, definitely rave.
Pardon, going about the
Good
apartment.
catch, sorry about that.
All right, good enough.
I'll take care of them, feel right.
Got an order to rave.
Fair. So we would look for a motion to acknowledge that report.
Move to acknowledge.
Motion to acknowledge by Lopez Serrano. For a second.
Second.
Second by Wonka. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carried. Number 7, discussion and or action on any further updates regarding future exploration of commercial building inspection program.
I've got my test on the 15th of January. So we're approaching that, with the holidays and everything in December. I wasn't able to get it scheduled. And that's gonna come up on a later agenda item, the importance of that.
Perfect. Okay. So no action on that, I don't believe. Discussion and or action on proposed amendments to chapter 34, fire prevention and protection. Jamie, or is that Chief Finke?
Let Chief talk through his memo that was in the packet.
Yep, so we talked about the two big things that I did a little bit of research on as I went back and reread the fire watch for for tents. And I think really the intention of that, and we can clarify it if the group would want to, but I think the intention of that, where a fire watch in a tent is when there's a, you think of the big old circus tents, I think is probably what that was honestly copied from at one point or another. I don't think it is meant to be like the, 40 by 40 tent that Aero Bar puts up when they have a band. I think those are for the circus tents that have, a few thousand people of them, and lions and tigers and bears and all that good stuff, and a bunch of flammable materials and, gates and just a lot of things, as opposed to a tent where there's a band and 3 of the sides are open. You could just step out if something happens. So we can adjust that, if the group feels that we need to clarify that a little bit. And then the other part about Knox boxes, where I think I have it spelled out with a little bit more clarity, and I sent this to Jennifer. I don't know if she's online or not. It's up to the village really how they want to write their code, but I think I said something, if we wanted to make a change, it would say something where access is difficult because of security. And then we could add multifamily residential complexes that have a common area would also need to have a Knox box. And then obviously the buildings that have either a sprinkler system or an alarm system would be continued to be required to have that. Those were really the adjustments that I had.
The only other one that I had on my list from last time, and I think it was just top of mind because of the holiday, was the Christmas tree storage. And you were gonna ask Marty if he does look for the signs about it being, did the sign say it's like flammable?
I don't remember if it was no
I think it was-
smoking.
I think it was no smoking,
No smoking.
and he does not.
Okay.
So do we need to change it or we need to enforce it? Well, we gotta do one or the other.
I think we should enforce it. You can talk to Marty about that, and I can only think of between the two villages, like, there's only 3 that come to mind. There's probably more than that, but I can think of 3. So it's not like
Christmas tree sales or 3 no smoking signs?
3 Christmas tree sales places. And there may be more than that, but IGA and Rib Mountain, Shell, gas station, and the one down by the farmer's market area are the 3 I can think of. And that's easily done for us to swing into those places and check on them when they set up.
I think there were a couple other like minor wording things, right? Something about open light or open flame or something in a barn, and there were a couple other.
There was one that discussed the open light bulbs. And that one I think again is, it's where there's a light bulb and then covering the light bulb is a more durable glass container, I guess I'll call it, that screws on. And again, I think some of that is antiquated because we don't have those issues with newer light bulbs anymore, but you know, in a barn many years ago, if you had a light bulb and then something hit that light bulb when it was on, whether it was a bird or an animal or whatever, and it fell down on dry hay, that was the intention of having that more durable containment device around it. So I don't think it hurts to have that language still in there, even though the chances of that happening are pretty slim, but.
So then the only change that we would be potentially looking at for next month would be related to Knox boxes, would be
Correct.
alterations related to Knox boxes.
Yep.
But I think we would just be looking for the committee if you wanted to see changes in the code come back about multifamily, changing the wording about we're difficult because of security. And the memo does also say, I'd like to see something that says that we recommend it for all commercial structures.
Correct. I want to have something in there to give us something to fall back on, that when we do have to, we're forced to force our way into a building and we damage somebody's door, that I want to have something to say that, you know, that we said that we recommend that you have a Knox box and this is the reason. Because it will happen.
And also the clarification on whatever the event size is or the tent size, however you're gonna call it. If it's 1,000 people or if it's 100 by 100 or X number of square foot of tent or.
I think we could, and I can reach out to some surrounding areas and see if anybody else has anything. I think it would be like the way that you exit the tent. I mean, there could be a size aspect to it. I think it's more the way that you exit it. Again, usually the tents that we have are open on 3 sides and they have a band sitting on the one side. So if anything happens, I think everybody could be out of that tent in 30 seconds if they really needed to be.
Were there any other recommendations on that the 34? So you would ask for a motion to bring this back in February with discuss changes? Like that.
Yep.
You would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to bring the issue back next month's meeting. With the changes.
Motion by Furling to bring chapter 34 fire prevention and protection back to the community life safety committee with changes as discussed. Is there a second? Second by Foss. Any discussion on the one?
So are we committing to changes that were discussed, or we're just saying we're gonna discuss it? Okay.
Yep, not committing, yeah, not voting to vote, yep.
Correct. So there'll be a red line copy of, hey, this is what we are changing, and then we can look at that and see yes, no, thumbs up, thumbs down. That's good. Okay, any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carried. New business discussion and or action on village on-street parking regulations. This came from the board. It referred to me from the police chief. That we talk about this, and make sure or attempt, I believe, to get all of our communities parking regulations the same, because right now they're not. And I think Michael can probably speak to how we came up with what we have, and then you can get that out of us.
Sure. Yeah, so about 10 years ago, we switched to the alternate side parking during the day. Mainly because the work of our staff happens during the day, so when we had the only restriction being overnight parking, it didn't really help with plowing or cleanup purposes during the day, because vehicles could park anywhere, and we had no way of really telling people they couldn't park on that side of the street. So with the alternate side parking, in a traditional winter, you know, maybe you're plowing overnight and then, or, you know, late into the night, then the next day you come in and you try to clean up the streets. We at least know maybe the east side of the road we can get cleaned up today, and tomorrow we'll take care of the west side and get banks pushed back or snow removal operations where we could plan that without having to, again, try to contact the police department of, hey, there's 2 cars on Sternberg today. Can you get those off the road, and try to talk to them? So I guess this is one thing we went to, and I think it's worked well as far as our operations go for plowing. In a snow emergency, there is no parking, but in general, the alternate side parking has been useful for the public works operations in the village of Weston, at least.
And this has been working for 9 years.
Yeah.
Good. Chief on.
That was my only concern on that aspect of it. The other part was the fine part of it. So currently in Schofield, they do alternate parking on some of the streets. The other streets, there's no parking. Rothschild, there's no parking on any of the streets unless you call in and get permission, and it's a non-snow day. So then Weston was a little bit different. One of the key points that we had was fines in Weston were $25 a car. Rothschild started with a warning. They built their way up to $30 as time went on. So we're trying to streamline some of the enforcement to make sure it's easier. So currently in Rothschild, we've changed that now. There's no warnings anymore. It goes right to $10. And so I'd like to see the fines go to $10, because the point of the matter is we're not trying to tax people. $25 in this day and age is half or quarter of $100. $10, it's not that big of a deal, but people still get mad on parking tickets at $10. So the goal of it is to have the DPWs get the cars off the street and get plowing and make sure it's being accomplished. So that's part of it. So the one is the fine part of it too. So, and then I have one addition to that. The addition is abandoned vehicles. And that should probably fall into parking, because we're talking about parking. I'd like to see a part of the ordinance added for abandoned vehicles, so that when you read the Weston ordinance, it doesn't really talk about immediate abandoned vehicles. If we have abandoned vehicles in parking lots, we can't get a hold of an owner, it's apparent that it's abandoned, we'll put a ticket on it and grab a tow truck, and then we haul it out of there at the owner's expense. And that's the way our ordinance in Rothschild is written, or has been for a number of years. So that's the second part of this ordinance I'd like to see. I don't know if Wassa has that, for example. So currently Weston does not have that. It's a little bit cumbersome in there. So if Jim called and said he had a vehicle on his lot, and we call 25 different phone numbers and can't find anybody, but it's parked in front of the door, we put a ticket on it, call a tow truck, and we're done with it, and we don't think about it again. They have to call and get it back then, so. 2 points, but first of all, I wanted to make sure Michael's good and things are working. And if they're not working, we need to change them. If they're working the way they are, then we'll just meander through that and just try to change the bond amount on it. So it's probably my fault that it's on there. I probably could have sat down with Michael and accomplished some of this. Sorry,
No, that's fine.
my fault.
I was thinking there was an abandoned vehicle thing, but maybe not.
It is, but it doesn't read.
Yeah, it's buried at the end of a
I
section.
I printed some ordinances here. It's in there. That tells abandoned vehicle.
Sure.
So if you pass them down, at least there's a printed copy.
Yeah, cause I know that's one too where it gets to like summer stuff too, and you're trying to crack seal and there's a vehicle that hasn't moved in 3 days. Oh, hey,
So if we can't find the owner and it's something that got
Yeah.
placed here from another town, we just put a ticket on it and it's gone.
So should we go through this one aspect at a time as far as port side, starboard side, and no overnight parking? Is that acceptable to everyone on the committee? Is that acceptable to public works and the police department? Michael, you're good with that?
As long as everything's working for Michael and the DPW, that's my main concern. Second part is if it hasn't been working in the past, then we need to fix it because it's important to get those plows through, so.
What about trailers parked in the roadway? I don't believe, is the verbiage in there for handling them as the same as vehicles? It came up last week or the week before.
It's in here.
Is that one in there?
It is.
That's in your guys', right?
Yeah, part of trailers that we've always experienced, they always have to be attached to a vehicle. They can't be left on the road. So.
So job trailers, if somebody's like working on a building.
Yeah, there was one up on just past Northwestern last week, the week before that DPW was having a problem with, so I had reached out to Mountain Bay Metro to have an officer run up there and assist, so.
yeah, that might just be a definition clarification that or a trailer is treated as a vehicle for purposes of on-street parking or something.
We kind of went through this with Jen and
Yeah,
the time frame on it is too long. This is cleaner that you can just take care of it
okay, that's fine.
instead of waiting 48 hours or
Yeah.
7 days or something.
Yeah, good question. Chief Hunt, would it be easier to have it the same as well, Schofield has it, or is it not an issue?
As I went through this, I found out that there's some street in Schofields that are odds and evens, and the other ones are not. As long as fines get closer and we can write them on one parking ticket, then life is a lot easier, so.
So you're more so concerned with just making the dollars back down to town?
2 points. I just want to make sure that what they have is working, and if not, then time to talk about it. And other than that, the fines are the same.
Well, the committee has input on that.
So how are you tracking the offense number internally?
It's all off location. So when they enter it in there and it's off location, so we have 7 court systems, 6 court systems together. So when it gets turned in at the end of the night, they're still writing tracks tickets on them. So they put a parking ticket on the car in an envelope, and then they write a tracks ticket. And then it hits the location on those, so it knows that it's, yep. 'Cause we have 1 court system. So, yes,
So if a person violates a second time in a different part of town, they'll receive a first offense.
they could. We have told the officers that if they look in the system, they can run it up as long as it's in the system. But we don't have any other tracking method. That was part of the Rothschild tracking method that we had before. We had it on a spreadsheet and we could look at it. But because of the 4 jurisdictions, it's a little bit rough to do that.
So does it make it more work for your officers to have to worry about offense numbers and different fines or?
It does when we like pre-print the parking tickets. It's nice to have just check boxes on them. And if you have 25 or 10 or whatever, they can write on each one of them, but so far it's been working out the way we've been doing it because we changed Rothschilds to 10. We've been writing $10 tickets in Weston. So our court system is very convoluted in a way because everything runs in 4 municipalities, run into one. Where Wassa, for example, you just have the one. And then statistically, you're pulling all that data out of those systems all the time. And everybody has their own tracking method through the court system. And it's very interesting.
And I don't think we need to change the ordinance to go to no warning and $10 because the penalty section of chapter 82 says the forfeiture for a violation of a local village regulation shall not be less than $5 nor more than $200 for the first offense and not less than $10 nor more than $500 for the second offense within 2 years. So I would think the officer could determine that the first ticket is $10 based off of that.
Change the bond schedule, right?
Yeah, and my concern is to be transparent on everything because it was being done one way for a long period of time. And today we're talking about changing things and I don't want someone to think that car's parked out there, gets a $25 ticket when really it's getting, I just want everything transparent on what is happening, so.
And then the trailer piece, we thought if we just changed the definition.
Or I guess however it's written elsewhere is fine. We can add it to that parking violation or.
I recommend an abandoned motor vehicle. Weston does not have that ordinance in there. And that pertains to what we're talking about, the parking part of it.
Would you say to have it in there and not have it in there?
To add it.
Add it. in, okay.
Yeah, add a whole section for abandoned vehicles. In the packet here, I printed some of the Schofield stuff, just so everybody can kind of see some of the differences, even though we made a decision on that part, but I would still like to see the abandoned motor vehicle.
Maybe we could make a note that that can be a referral for next agenda items.
Okay. Abandoned vehicles, we don't have to make any changes to the $10 fines, then we want to add a definition and call out, specifically call out how trailers are treated as a standard issue car, truck or bus.
I think trailers would get handled if we added the abandoned vehicles, then we wouldn't change definitions. We'd add a section under, likely under 82.
Oh, yeah.
But the same, a trailer parking would be the same, even if it wasn't abandoned, you can't just. Are you supposed to leave your boat port side, starboard side all winter? You can do that. I think you wanted language that said it's gotta be hooked to a trailer or.
Has to be on a vehicle.
Yeah. to a
I
keel.
would prefer that. I don't know if Weston's says that in it. I have not searched that part of it.
I can tell you that's what Wass's ordinance is, of trailer can't be on the street without it being attached to a vehicle.
And we do give like job trailers. If someone says, hey, a dumpster, stuff like
Trailer or
that.
something.
Yeah.
And they're usually easier to track down because they've got their company name on it or whatever versus somebody's grass clippings trailer that sits in the street for months at a time.
Yeah. Trailers, what's up with that semi trailer?
Is that like permanent or do the people get like a time frame where like say a house is getting remodeled and they ask for you know, the carpenter or somebody is like, hey, my job trailer, I'm gonna leave it on the street for a week. Like, is that allowed or is it you don't get any days?
Just speaking from my perspective, typically it's a combination of officer discretion, like they understand this guy's actively working on a job site, so they keep an eye on it. That's typically something that parking control is keeping an eye on and they work with those guys. And we do get phone calls from people saying, I'm gonna be working on this spot. Are you okay with it? And we never have an issue with it as long as it, you know, we're not expecting a blizzard or something. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's more of a, I would say, an informal process.
sure. I was thinking
From
more
my-
summertime than winter.
Yeah.
We're not lucky enough to have parking patrol.
Yeah.
But same thing. If you call in and make arrangements, you're good, as long as you get approval on it.
Sure. Yeah, and
Those that don't get approval and are taking up space and so.
okay, so that's good to know that that's how you'd handle it, because in the past, former police departments told people that that was a public works issue and to work it out with us, but really it's, you know, like that'd be like, you know, a rougher wanting a dumpster on the street because there wasn't room in the driveway for
We
it.
would have a
or-
call taker on it and it would have an expiration date on it and
Okay,
then they'd follow up on it.
I've literally taped a letter across their double doors, so like
sure.
they'll see it when they open it for their job. If
Yeah.
there's an issue with it, but
Okay.
What about snow emergencies? That's people for that?
Yeah.
Probably, right? So
Yeah.
even though
Yeah, I mean, generally winter, I wouldn't say, I didn't tell people they could put things out in the right of way for winter. I was just thinking like summer, you know. We said it, said everything has to be on a vehicle. That's generally when you see more work getting done and people would leave a job trailer for, you know, maybe a week or two.
Okay.
A lot of roofing gets done.
So then we would look for a motion to defer action on street parking.
I'll move to defer action to the February meeting regarding on-street parking.
To defer street parking action until next month by Lopez Serrano. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Olson. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Well, motion carried. Second interaction on carbon monoxide detector in existing municipal, in existing multifamily structure.
There's a little bit of information in there regarding that. Roman, I think you were gonna also look into the, I'm gonna use the word legality of this for lack of a better term, is if we can even make the rules more stringent. I thought that we could, but I could certainly be wrong. So I don't know if you have anything on that.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to actually submit a packet item for the committee. My apologies on that. But when it comes to commercial buildings and carbon monoxide detectors, we have to refer to the state code on that one, SPS 360 through 365 is the commercial building code. And so when we get into it, listed labeled carbon monoxide detectors shall be installed at locations specified in stats 101, 149, which is the official statutes on carbon monoxide detectors, and maintained in accordance with those appropriate stats, including buildings existing on October 1st, 2008. So this is one of the rare retroactive codes that was put in place. Which are residential buildings or include residential buildings and contain fuel burning appliances except as provided in subsection 5, which is our exceptions to that. So subsection 5 says installation of carbon monoxide alarms or detector is not required in buildings if the construction was initiated before October 1st, 2008, or if the plans were approved before 2008, provided the building does not have an attached enclosed garage and either of the following circumstances apply. 1, all of the fuel burning appliances in the building are of sealed combustion type and are covered by the manufacturer's warranties against defects. 2, all of the fuel burning appliances in the building are of sealed combustion type that are inspected in accordance with subsection 3 or rules by the Department of Agricultural Trade and Consumer Protection, blah, 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 which gives us the requirements that they have to be inspected by an HVAC qualified person. So there is some kind of, it's obviously not clear, right? It's obviously case specific. We have to know which apartment buildings have attached garages to them and which apartment buildings do or don't have sealed combustion units in them. In order for it to be, going back to some of the older apartments that we had. Unfortunately, our adoption of SPS 360 through 365 is contingent on having a commercial building inspector enforce those. So it becomes a lot easier once the village has a commercial building inspector on staff. So that's where we get into, it definitely, from a life safety standpoint, having a commercial building inspection for these types of situations on staff definitely helps other departments with this type of issue. So, so I don't know if we, have any other concerns on it other than, that's the brief of the 14 pages of code that I have in front of me specific to carbon monoxide detectors. So it gets into the weeds pretty heavy on who can conduct those inspections of the carbon monoxide detectors and it's a commercial building inspector or a fire inspector can do those inspections. Once the municipality has the ability to enforce the code. So
And that was my concern with some of the older apartment buildings that do have gas fired appliances in them. So I know we have several apartment buildings that, I mean, they kind of have carbon monoxide alarms. They might have one in the basement that's in the vaulted room that has the boiler that was put in there in 1982 that nobody is ever gonna hear at 3 o'clock in the morning if it goes off. And even we have another building in the village that is it's a beautiful building and they are technically, it was built after 2008 and they are following the rules as it says now, and I don't remember exactly, but you know, that they have to have the meter within 15 feet of the gas fired appliance and in the same room and all this kind of stuff. But where they have them and the way their building is laid out, there's the furnace room, which is inside of another room, which is off of a hallway, and then down the hallway are the actual residents' apartments. And it's mostly an elderly housing facility, and if that alarm goes off at 3 o'clock in the morning, there is no way they're gonna hear that thing. So my concern is that the risk for a multiple casualty incident in one of these things is, I wouldn't call it high. I mean, you know, mostly obviously those gas fired units are safe for the most part. But I mean, it would be, I don't want to use the word easy, but it's certainly conceivable that there could be an apartment building that has a carbon monoxide issue that nobody hears an alarm go off and we could have 50 seriously ill or unfortunately fatalities in one of those buildings.
well, and they're required in new construction for a reason.
Exactly, yeah, yeah. So again, with one of them is a building that's, I mean, they're following the rules. I just don't think the rules are, I don't want to say they're not strict enough, but I think they can just be laid out a little bit better so those residents would be able to hear the alarms. And I know we have other buildings that don't have alarms in them, but do have gas fired appliances. And then we have other buildings where they say they don't have gas fired appliances and they don't have gas fired furnaces because we can get into the areas to check those, but I don't know if they have gas stoves in their apartments. There's gas coming into the building.
Right. And when, on that note, the appliances apply to stoves. So it's not just a furnace, it is a gas range, cooktop, anything that is burning a, you know, a natural gas or what the byproduct is carbon monoxide.
And the reason this came up is because not this past year, but last winter, so just over a year ago, we were quite a bit behind on inspections, so I helped Marty and Marty said, why don't you do all the apartment buildings? And as I was going through these, I'm like, this is not good. Because I was walking to some of those older buildings that are some of the ones that are probably not the best kept and they don't have carbon monoxide, but they're, you know, before 2008. And I don't want to force any mandates on building owners that it's going to cost them a fair amount of money, but carbon monoxide detectors are pretty cheap. You know, they're not $80 a pop. You can get them pretty cheap. And install several of them in your building. They usually have a life expectancy of 10 years. I think this is pretty simple for them to do. I own a house that I rent out myself, and I told them they could not move in until I had smoke and carbon monoxide detectors in it, because I would think as a building owner, the liability of not having that in there could certainly be something they should be concerned about, so. That was why I wanted to look into it.
It's okay then if we would write code that would be more strict. That would be after 2008.
That was the understanding that I was always under, is that we could write code that is more strict than what the state enforces.
If we have a commercial building inspection.
We can enforce the code as it sits in SPS, but in that statutes prohibit enforcing additional or more restrictive standards for multifamily dwellings. So if we have a commercial building inspector, then we can essentially enforce the commercial building code. Okay. But we can't adopt an ordinance that is more restrictive than the commercial building code. The one thing with the carbon monoxide detectors is that it's, unless it is, the unit is all electric for their appliances and has a detached garage versus an attached garage. Those are really the only two exemptions requiring the carbon monoxide detectors in an apartment building, even if it was before '08. So it's extremely, the margin is extremely slim for the exceptions. We just can't technically enforce it currently.
But the example that Chief gave with the complex and down the hall, which is post 2008, who's following the requirements.
They're following the rules as they're set out right now.
Even if we made a rule change.
If they're placed in the proper location. But when it comes to the sleeping rooms, they technically need to be in the sleeping rooms and outside adjacent to the sleeping rooms. So
So in that 356, whatever, it says somewhere's in there also, and like, can these things be daisy chained together, like smoke detectors, or
yeah, so, you know,
they could have one in the furnace room, and then you
And that's-
also have some in the hallway outside of.
correct, and that's the whole point of the code, having them daisy chained together, is so when one goes off, the intercommunication tells the rest of them that there's an issue.
So what you're saying now is that technically they're not in compliance, the
I don't think
furnace
so.
room, unless somebody's sleeping in the furnace room too, but that room is in compliance, but if there's people sleeping somewhere else, maybe everyone sleeps in the furnace room, I don't know.
You never know, it's nice and cozy. But based on what I read, yes, they do need to be outside of the sleeping room and in the sleeping room in a commercial building. So, yes, they're in the furnace room, right? But again, as a municipality, we haven't had anybody to actually enforce it other than the state, even in post 2008.
But I think what you're saying, Roman, is even if we had a commercial building inspector, we cannot make the code for those buildings that were built pre-2008 more restrictive than what SPS says.
We can't make it more restrictive, but the restrictions are very restrictive.
If they have a building that was built in 1999, they can have a sealed gas-fired unit that's inspected by an HVAC guy every year and have a detached garage, and they don't have to have a carbon monoxide.
As long as, if they actually go through the extent of having it inspected annually by a certified personnel, and then provide us or you that document and keep that on file for every single one of their units, that is the exemption.
But it's probably
Which we
cheaper than a
cannot-
$15 CO detector than.
It's cheaper than hiring an
They come and
HVAC guy.
sniff every single furnace and every single range.
Yeah.
Right.
And provide that information to you and your inspectors annually.
Yeah,
You can put that in your fire inspection, right? That it failed inspection because you don't have the HVAC.
Yes, we could add it.
Okay.
so personally looking at it, I don't think we need to adopt anything more restrictive. We just need to adopt a commercial building code. Because it is, the way it's written is, yes, it's way cheaper to do carbon monoxide detectors than pay $150 an hour for an HVAC technician.
My other question was, have we ever done any sort of campaign to distribute CO detectors? Have we?
Not to my knowledge. When I did those inspections last year, every building that did not have one that I felt should have had one, I made notes. It's not a violation, but I did make a note that we recommended they had a carbon monoxide detector.
Sometimes there's grants for weather radios or other smoke detectors, those sort of things that.
We have looked into it as far as the fire district, and we can get money from like NFPA and some other agencies for smoke detectors, but they never do anything for carbon monoxide detectors, unfortunately.
We can make it a push in May for Building Safety Month.
Yeah, or even with daylight savings and time frame to just do reminders about checking your batteries. Do you have one? Where are ones available? But sometimes like Focus on Energy and things, I don't know if they have any sort of partnership where we could offer coupons or incentives for to help offset cost. If that was a concern.
Right. And the nicer ones are more pricey. The ones that have the digital display and those things can be like $75, but you can get, you know, the 10-year sealed units from First Alert or something like that. They're like $13. They're pretty inexpensive. It ends up costing you like $1 a year.
Yeah.
So.
So do we need action on that or?
I don't know that we would take action until we had a commercial building inspector and then when we would just adopt the code in our code, that we enforce the code.
This would stay in business until.
For a little bit.
Well, then maybe motion to defer action. We're gonna try to get action on it, right? It can't go away. Take a motion to defer action.
I'll make a motion to defer the action.
Fine, motion by Sir Wonka. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ermeling. Motion to defer action on carbon monoxide detectors until further notice. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Vote say no. Motion carried. Next item of business, discussion and or action on proposed amendments to chapter 38, health and sanitation. Who this is? Jamie?
I thought we just would talk through it like we have previously.
Oh, rats.
Yes, rats.
Rats.
Knew there would be had to be a pun in there someplace. Just if there were things that there was questions or clarifications.
Who's got stuff on chapter 38?
Is there a separate, the compost piles, is that considered like, any exposure prohibited or, smell or, you know, I think sometimes those things get pretty putrid or.
I do not know if there's anything separate for compost. Do you know if there's
We
any?
do in the refuse recycling ordinance.
Okay.
Yeah, they have to be 10 feet from the property line, so in 66. And it's like the last part of that chapter.
In 66, you said?
Wait, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's-
I don't think that would have made a difference.
Oh, there you go, residential composting.
That should be referenced in here then, for 38 somewhere else.
Well, solid waste disposal is also part of 38. I think it's. I don't know why it's in 38 and then we have a whole separate solid waste, like why the.
Solid waste disposal. I think one is. I'm not really sure. I guess I've never really paid attention to the 38.
A cross-reference, I agree, would be helpful.
Good. What else?
That was the only thing I saw.
Anyone else? Okay. Page 24, section 38, 102, rat control. just rats or all rodents? Might as well.
It says rats, doesn't it?
I know it says rats, but it also says circa 1982.
Mhm.
Was there an issue with rats in 82?
There was an issue with massage parlors. You got that dialed in though.
A lot of work in New York City.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, there's this.
something else.
I'm thinking all references to rats could just be rodent or some kind of nuisance. I know we've had skunk issues in recent years.
Mhm.
Nice skunks,
Yeah.
I've
It was a
heard
skunk
about
out. It was a little bit warmer
good population.
a couple weeks ago.
We change it to rodent, I'm feeding of the definition for what rodent is.
Yeah, I mean, it-
Apparently there's,
and a rodent could be like.
I have no fear of molestation.
How they define then what rodent would be, it would say rat, rodent.
some-
Been in the fence? No.
So
So what do we think? Do we want to make this more restrictive than just rats? Okay to have a skunk farm or a mouse house or? Is Disney Weston gonna be a thing or what? The little Mickey Mouse thing?
I used that sounds.
Have we had a rat issue that anybody knows about in the last, I don't know, let's say decade
I've rats.
Or 40 years?
I mean,
I have a good population of them.
On your
Yeah.
private property.
Yeah,
like.
In
yeah,
your garden.
in fact,
no, everywhere.
I was in a house that was full of them the other day, but it wasn't in the village.
So was it considered a rat harborage? A place where rats could live without fear of frequent molestation or disturbance?
They had a bunch of dogs and cats and the homeowners said they got them to keep the rat population under control, so we'll say it was not free of molestation.
so do we have anything else that addresses other rodents like skunks that we've had issues with? Any other ordinances out there?
We talked about stuff in animals.
yeah, that was moles in.
That you can't purposefully keep them.
Yes.
Yeah, but like,
And then-
Lots of rats.
The use of poison to control them is talked about in 10. But not the specific.
Lots I do for rats. We're good there. Do we just send them north?
I've never seen a rat in my life other than I don't know,
Oh.
I've seen a muskrat.
Think of your rats.
About a mouse times 6. They look identical, but they just have a tail on them that's probably, I don't
Ugly.
know, 9 inches or 12 inches.
Some mice are cute.
Yeah, they're cute.
Rats are plain ugly.
I've gotten rid of a lot of them since I moved in. I had a white one there last year.
Really?
I think Mike had a good point though, so I just Googled difference between rats and mice, just for the heck of it. And it actually says the most common rodent pests in the US are the Norway rat, the roof rat, and the house mouse. So like, it just seems like we have a lot of attention on rats, if we're not addressing all the other things that could be,
I like the word rodent.
I mean,
Rodent.
rodent or, and then we'd have to define it, but it just, you know,
Yeah, the rodent could be a squirrel.
But that's where you put in your definition.
Yeah.
And
My
maybe you would
neighbor
want
might
squirrel,
agree,
like
but-
prohibited is if you had squirrels living, I don't know, in your house. Probably not a good spot, right?
I mean, I can tell
Tree
you
is
what
okay, though.
Wikipedia says what a rodent is, but I don't know that that's the definition. of what it is.
Through the roof. Yeah, the hooves too, 'cause yeah, he's got all kinds of goofy.
So we
things.
wanna expand that
Stuff.
maybe to include more than rats.
I guess the other piece would be, do we handle extermination or that you can't have rodents in chapter 10 animals, is that just an addition? Cause there is pieces of that within chapter 10. And then this very detailed piece about rat control maybe is deleted out of this chapter. I don't know.
So are rats and mice prohibited animals? You can't have a pet mouse?
No, I think that you can have a pet mouse.
So then
We don't specifically say you can't have a pet mouse.
Yeah, there are people that pet rats.
right, so then you can, so.
You can go to Ace and buy a rat.
Yeah.
You better be not bringing it back to the village. Well, what, is Ace a rat harborage then?
It very potentially could be. I don't think they fear molestation.
It seems to go a long ways down a rabbit hole about rats. Like, I mean, it talks about when you're looking at the definition of rat proofing, making a building reasonably rat proof. What does that mean? I mean, a rat can get in anywhere. I mean, so what are we gonna say is rat proofing a house? There had to have been a rat problem in 1982. There had to be something that premised such a robust rat ordinance.
I guess this may have been copied from a larger municipality that has issues with these.
So what do we wanna do? Leave it, take it away? Encourage rat? Just be a neuter your rat, what do we gotta do?
I'd say we could remove it from this section.
Mhm.
I don't remember what we had in chapter 10. This will be the language. If
I
it
had-
kind of covered.
The poisonous piece was that you couldn't harm someone else's pet with that, but I think that we could make a subsection here because it does say that designed for the purpose of rodent or pest extermination. So I think we could discuss the piece of trying to if you were trying to exterminate rats under animals, I think.
So you feel that 38-102 can just be stricken in its entirety?
Yeah, and unless we feel strongly about the piece of rat proofing being in ordinance.
I think maybe a big part, at least in historically, was, rats kind of carried diseases. So I mean, they probably still do. So that's why it maybe fits under the health and sanitation, but I don't know how I mean, it's not necessarily just rats.
bad.
Could we make it rodents and just zoom it way out and just make some like 2-sentence thing that says all of this in 2 sentences, like don't have a rat house that causes the Black Plague on Sternberg or something.
With people feeding skunks a few years ago.
And it gets as far as like, you can't have a rat harborage, so you have to have all your lumber neatly piled and it has to be a foot above the ground and it just things that I think are pretty ridiculous. And there are actually people doing that.
Is that covered
Because
under?
don't go look at the wood pile in my backyard right now.
Well, I had we had a wood
Chapter
pile years
50.
ago on the side of the
There's some
garage and I
tie-ins
was
to
taking
chapter
some
50
wood off
that
and there
type of
was
stuff too.
Yeah.
a rat in there.
So yeah, we can maybe cross-reference chapter 50 then on that.
Chapter 50 or chapter 10?
50 for us.
Okay.
I mean, under things prohibited 50.100. It does not specifically list.
My neighbor had.
So if that's the case, then we don't have to worry about the approved health or rat proofing states material approved by the health officer. Health officer isn't defined. So is that any officer in good health or?
I'm not sure that the health officer is coming out to look at those.
It's on there, page 25, rat proofing.
Yeah,
But if we make that go away, then we don't have to worry about
Yeah,
We still want our officers healthy, but that's different.
well, I think that would be someone from Health and Human Services. It wouldn't be a humane officer, it'd be,
It just says health officer.
yeah.
So we would want to define that if we don't make that go away.
Let's, we'll bring this section, we'll do a little research on what other communities have, if they have a broader rodent one, and we'll bring this back.
Perfect.
As a kid,
How about
shoot rats and dogs.
page 27, paragraph Bravo? Persons or municipalities engaged in dumping or disposal operations must conduct the operations in such a way that dust, dirt, debris, and other materials or substances will not be carried by wind or water across the boundary of the parcel of land being used for the operations. I don't think our yard waste site meets those guidelines. And I don't know if, like, they're crushing or whatever operations that happen, is that an issue with those?
What?
I think we try not to have those things occur. I'm not saying that they have never occurred on any property, but I think the goal is that they would not occur.
Disposal.
Same thing. Everybody must have had it in.
I started building out here on the side of the river.
Unloading, throwing away, it's hard. I'm not sure. The yard waste fits disposal, like crushing, I don't think would fit disposal.
What's this, or burying waste, waste, garbage, or refuse, and then farther up, it talks about what waste is.
Yeah, but you're not burying waste if you're crushing your. Probably covered under mining or something else too.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, even like spreading manure or things like that on farm fields, I say that none of that ever crosses a property line or something, I think is, or never gets into a waterway, I think that's
Probably not realistic,
it's not
right?
realistic, yeah.
So is there a way that we could change that to make it? Not less, not more restrictive, but more realistic.
Like, should make every effort not to.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Shall utilize best management practices to,
These guidelines.
yeah, minimize, reduce something. And it's essentially what the DNR has for construction site erosion and keeping things on is it's best management practice to minimize.
Perfect. Good. Any other discussion on health and sanitation? Sounds like we'll see that one back next time. We need a motion to defer action until February.
Yes, please.
I move to defer action to the February meeting on the chapter 38, is it?
Motion by Lopez Serrano to defer action. Chapter 38 until February. Is there a second?
I will second.
Second by Foss. Raise your hand first. Yeah. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carried. Announcements. Just a friendly reminder to RSVP to Valerie for the Christmas party if you didn't already. Shame on me, I probably didn't.
This last week.
Was that your RSVP?
No, I didn't do it. I'm saying, I'm raising my hand and say, hey, I didn't do it. So maybe I'm the only one, but if there's anyone else, I'll take the fall for you. But here's your friendly public reminder that's recorded. Any other announcements, anyone else?
I would just say thank you. I know sometimes these seem that these seem odd, but it's really helpful to have this devoted time to look at it with a lot of perspectives. So I know these ordinance, you might be like, oh, but this has been very helpful. So it's very appreciated.
Every 43 years is often enough, maybe not often enough, I don't know. But better now than never. Okay. Remarks? Remarks? So items for next agenda, we're looking to carry over a couple of things here. Anything new exciting for next agenda? You get 5. No?
The abandoned vehicles was the other thing that we talked about earlier.
Good. Excellent. Okay, our next regular meeting date will be Monday, February 3rd at 5 p.m. We would ask for a motion to adjourn.
Move to it.
Motion to adjourn by Lopez Serrano, second. Second by Wilson. Any discussion on the motion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Will say no. Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned at 6:11 p.m. Thank you, everyone.